Greetings, I am Tom Earl. On this week's episode, we talk about why I don't see color is a lie with Dr. Angela Courage and Dr. LaTonya Jackson. Check it out. Woo! Greetings, I am Tom Earl. And this is my year of adventure. We know you could be anywhere, so the fact that you are here today sharing your greatest gifts, your time and energy means the world to me. I hope you know that in this moment, you are valued, you are loved, and you are appreciated just as you are. As you can see, I am not alone. I have for you today two amazing guests. They go by the name of Dr. Angela Courage Mallet and Dr. LaTonya Jackson. What's going on, y'all? How's it going?
Hey, Tom. How's it going? Good.
Wonderful. I'm glad to hear I'm doing well. Yes.
Hey, it's going great. It's a great summer to be working from home.
Yes, indeed. So before we jump into the thick of it, just as we move forward, how would you like me to address you both as we go throughout this interview, get to know each other better?
So, Tom, for me, even though it is Dr. Jackson, I am absolutely okay with you just calling me LaTonya for this interview.
All right, cool.
And for me, just call me Doc Courage. That's what most people know me by. So I'm good with that.
Nope. Awesome. Well, LaTonya, Doc Courage, do you mind if I give a brief intro to the awesomeness that you both are? To the folks out there listening, being like, I'm in. Tell me a little bit about them, Tom. You mind if we do that?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Cool.
Sure. Go on.
So let's start with LaTonya. LaTonya is the founder of Identified Consulting Services. And I said it like that, folks, because it's like your Identified Consulting Services. And she is also an executive and career coach, speaker, trainer, and author, which we're about to jump into here in a sec, the what she has authored. And Doc Courage is the founder of Courage Communications for the number 4 change. She is also an author, which you're going to find out here in a sec. Motivational speaker, change agent, consultant, researcher, and educator facilitating diverse communication needs. That's what's up, y'all. I appreciate you so much taking the leap of faith, being on the celebration, and being here with my audience. It means the world to me. Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Tom. We appreciate it.
Of course.
We're so excited to be here.
Here's how we like to start off. So bios are dope, awesome. They share all the really awesome moments. And, like we could read it online. So we're going to start with a little prompt. I know y'all are facilitators, so you may have done this as well. If you really knew me, you'd know that. So what's something you could share with us that we'd never learned from the bio, but for maybe your BFF or a family member, they're like, well, let me tell you about them. What would a little tidbit like that be that you could share with the good folks listening?
Oh, that's such a good question. Let's see. Angela, you have yours? Doc? No. Okay. If you really knew me, I am a really great administrator, and I love being behind the scenes. So even though I'm sitting here with you all today, it's not my favorite place to be, despite all of the accolades and getting up in front of a room of people and teaching. I love that stuff. But when I'm done, I go crawl under a blanket, I get a book, or I watch my favorite show, and I'm done. I don't want to deal with you for the rest of the day. So that's what my family would say.
Well, I gotta follow up with what's one of the shows that you watch? What's one of the favorite shows you got?
They're not paying me royalties for this. NCIS. I love Gibbs and, DiNozzo's not there anymore. Ziva. I love that show. I actually stopped watching it when Ziva and Tony left, but I've gotten back into it because it's on Netflix. And so, but yeah, it's one of my favorite shows. I'll watch all of them all the way back to when Kate was on. So
there we go. For your fellow fans, I'm sure they got every single one of those references. They're right there. That's what's up.
If you are into it, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He's on all the NCISs,
Okay.
Gibbs is. So he shows up periodically in other ones as well.
I love it. Doc Courage, what about you? If you really knew me, you'd know that.
If you really knew me, you'd know that I'm not really an extrovert, and that so I am often seen in public on stages, and that I may appear to be one. I have a lot of energy when I'm there. It takes a lot of recharging for me, and I like to have a lot of time alone. And when I'm alone, I may not remember what I did in all of those times on the stage, and I may need to completely regroup and re-go through everything to figure out what I did and what I said. So I may not stick to my notes. So I like to be really creative. So some of the extroverted appearances are not all the benefits that they appear to be. So yeah, if you really knew me, you'd know that it's a mess behind the scenes. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Vouch for that now.
But I have had people say it's a beautiful mess.
Yes, it is a beautiful mess, always.
There we go. That's awesome. So tell me about the way y'all know each other. What's the connection?
I like when Angela tells this story because I think it helps people.
Okay, so I'll tell the story. Do you want me to go back to the very beginning, LaTonya? Okay,
Sure.
So I'll go back to the very beginning. So when LaTonya was a graduate student at the University of Arkansas, and I was an undergraduate. So she was a traditionally aged graduate student, 22, 23, something like that. I was an undergraduate freshman, and I was about 38 the year we met. I was a single mom and had 3 kids, and we both met in a class, gospel singing class. So we sang in a gospel choir that was an accredited class, and we toured for the audience that is not white, or that is white. It's not a Southern gospel, but a Black gospel choir. So white Southern Baptist think gospel choir is a Southern gospel choir. So that's why I'm clarifying that. So we sang together in a gospel choir, and we toured all over, Birmingham. I don't remember where we went on tour that year that we were together. And so that's where we met. And so LaTonya was actually, because she was in grad school and I was just a freshman as a non-traditional student, she was actually knew a lot more about school and succeeding in school than I did as a first generation student. So I don't think I've ever told her this though. So she was a big inspiration to me in knowing that, I could go to her and seeing her succeed, and not only succeed, but being in grad school, being able to get tips and, just following her example as someone younger than me, but doing it well. So that's where we met, and we toured and we sang in a gospel choir together for that first year that we met. And we've managed to be friends and write a book together since then. So
we've survived a lot. I thought you were going to talk about financial aid. So that's the part I always remember, the financial aid office.
I forgot all about that part.
You always tell that story. So I'll add to what Angela said, because she's right. We did sing in this choir called Inspirational Singers. It was run by Dr. Eddie Jones, who's recently, he passed in the last 4 years, because he passed right after my middle child, or the time when Josiah was in the womb. And so anyway, but I was a financial aid officer at the university, and Angela came in my office, and she wouldn't see it. I don't even think you were in my alphabet, because we were assigned students based on last names, and she wanted to see me. A lot of people would get referred to me because they knew I understood not only the financial aid side of it, but also the the impact of how, loans and all that kind of stuff, that was part of my wheelhouse. And so she ended up seeing me, and we talked for a long time, and there were things I didn't know. So even though we had sang together, I think our friendship actually formed when she came in the financial aid office to get help. And we spent, I think, like 2 hours talking, and I had students, and I was also the athletic financial aid liaison, I think, during that time. And so I had a lot of going on of people pulling on me. But when I closed my door, nobody interrupted. And Angela and I we closed the door, and we had some really deep conversation. And of course, we took care of the financial aid stuff. But like I said, I think that's when our friendship began to actually formulate more, and it blossomed into what it is today.
So
here's an example of the messy part. I forgot all about that, and we even talked about that recently. And I cried the most in financial aid offices because it was overwhelming. I didn't know how to do that, and I did forget about that. I would not have made it my first semester through school had it not been for LaTonya. I wouldn't have made it. Just would not have made it. So I sit here today because she helped me in financial aid, and she wasn't even obligated to.
Mm-hmm.
So there we go.
I love the way stories just evolve into what brings us here today, but we're going to jump back and figure out how this book came to be. But for the folks who are wondering, Doc Courage and LaTonya wrote a great book called The 5 Blinders to Seeing Color. They co-authored it together. It's going to be the heart of this interview. Before we jump into the content of the book, kind of take us up. So you're singing in a choir together. You're hanging out in financial aid office. Did you 10 days later say, let's write a book? How did this book come about? Break that origin story for us down.
I wouldn't say it was 10 days, but maybe a couple of years after that. So really, I started Identified Consulting officially full-time back in 2015 after I experienced a layoff. And I had written a book, a children's book that I co-authored with my daughter. And so people were asking me, how'd you write books? How'd you write a book, right? And so I was getting lots of hits, and I was like, this is not what I set out to do. But Angela and I, and at the same time during that process, I was looking for, I had become government, you can become licensed to be a government contractor. So you could, I took a class, I went through all of the steps with the SBA local office, and I saw an opportunity on the federal business site for the National Endowment of the Arts, and they wanted a diversity training. And so I was like, wow, this would be a really big project, and I couldn't do it by myself. And so you partner, right? You reach out and you collaborate and you connect. And the first person who came to mind for me was Angela. And so I reached out to Doc, and we met at Panera, and we were talking, and I'm like, here's what they're wanting. I really think this is going to be a really big deal. And if we get it, it could be really lucrative for both of us financially, but also I think we have a really cool opportunity. And I didn't really even know what it was. And so this is the creative, messy part. We got together. Angela said yes. She was like, yes, let's do it. And so we got together, we crafted, this was right before Thanksgiving, mind you. It was just this really long process. And we got together and we created this really good proposal. And then we got a second round, and so it literally, I think we went through 3 rounds of requests for changes. And so we just kept meeting. And then at the end of the day, they decided not to move forward with the project. And so we spent 4 months building this proposal. And we designed this curriculum and the color acronym. We were just all in. The creative side of Angela completely came out. She's the artist. So the wheel, she just visionary on steroids. I was an instructional designer by trade in the company I worked in. So I'm designing, this is what we're going to do. These are the objectives. And we've got this wonderful thing. And so, we get through the holidays because we were disappointed with the decision, but we get through the holidays. And I look at it one day and I said, Angela, I think we should just do it ourselves. We don't need to, yes, we designed it for this organization, but since they're not using it and they're not going forward with the program at all, it's really good content. Let's put it out there. And we began to have more conversations about that. And so the Color Expressions program, which is what we designed, is not what we launched. I said, we got to get out there a little bit sooner. And we decided I said, let's just do an ebook, because ebooks are supposed to be small. Ours isn't quite small. They're supposed to be small, and we only had 5 blinders, right? And so it started off that way, and then life happened. And so, but that was that 4 years ago? Yeah, almost 5 years ago now that we began this.
2016.
Yeah.
2016.
So
yeah.
2016. So 4 years ago, we started this process, and I looked, all of the things that have happened. Trump has been elected president, and right in the midst of that. And so we decided that we wanted, life was happening. Doc was diagnosed with breast cancer, and we walked out that journey for 2 years, maybe almost 3 together. I had another baby in the middle of it. So life kept happening. And then you fast forward to 2020, and George Floyd happened. And I couldn't watch the video. I'm very sensitive in that way. But I forced myself to watch all 8 minutes of that. And I was in tears. And then I remembered, we can help. We have resources. And I literally texted Angela and said, it's time for us to release this book. And so whatever we got to do to get it done, let's get it done. And she, of course, again, agreed to work with me and my crazy work ethic. So unrealistic deadlines and expectations, but she said yes. So here we are. And Angela, anything you got?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if your audience is old enough to remember this, but there used to be a guy on radio named Paul Harvey, and he would say, and the rest of the story is that, and so the rest of the story is that, so we started writing this in 2016 because we had this contract. Really, we had a whole book, and we had it so much written that when LaTonya sent me this text message, all we had left to do was editing. I mean, just the proposals and the contract, everything we had already filled in to explain what we were doing was a book. And so, but, breast cancer can take it out of you, and having a baby takes a lot, and already having 2 children and having a baby. So we're in 2 different life stages and just different life struggles and things like that. But part of what makes us a great team is that LaTonya does have this, she's got a very structured way of thinking and developing and designing curriculum and things like that. My expertise academically is in interracial and intercultural communication research. And then, we both have life experiences that come from different places. Mine is, we both have cross-cultural living and international living, but also living across the color and culture line in the United States. So taking both our academic expertises and then our personal life expertise and putting them together. So when George Floyd was murdered, it wasn't something that happened way out there to somebody else. It's something that could have happened easily to LaTonya's husband or to my children. And so for us, it's personal. And so just the fact that we had it so ready, and life opened up the door again for us to be able to finish with being finished beating breast cancer, and babies being, at a stage now that we could get together and satisfy LaTonya's drive and all of that. So that's the rest of the story. It's not that we were neglectful at all. It's just that life had put it on pause for a good reason, and now it's a great time, and it's really even more needed and probably timely at this moment.
I love that. I love origin stories. So one last let's set the stage question, and then we're going to jump into the heart of the book. What was your background, your experience, anything you want to add that led to you choosing to do this kind of work and to writing the book?
So for me, I would say I didn't want to do this work. And I know that's going to seem oxymoronic, right? But I really didn't. My dissertation process, I actually wrote 3. that's a whole other story. If you want me to walk you through how do you get through that, but that's I will tell you. But I literally had to switch chairs. I had to make a decision, and I had to find a new chair. And my new chair said to me, "What are you passionate about?" And I was like, "I'm passionate about Black women, and I want to understand why we choose the careers we choose in corporate environments, because it didn't seem like I was moving anywhere, or if I did make a career move." And so that's sort of, and it's not that I haven't been part of this before. I actually started this journey of diversity and inclusion work by being on the student council for Black student government in the Big 12 back in the day. I won't tell you what day, but back in the day, I was part of the Big 12 Council on Black student government. And so I've been doing this, in the school that I went to was the University of Nebraska. So we had a cross burning, we had a professor use the N-word and say it was educational. So it's been part of my history, right? And that's just school, right? That doesn't include the experiences I had of someone giving me rice cakes because they said I was overweight in high school, or the getting a friend of mine pink lipstick because they said she acted like a white girl, or a relaxer because they thought that the person needed their hair straightened for, so like that was high school, junior high, right? So I could keep going back a number of years in my own life journey. And so it's like the work is just always there. And when I am asked a question, I don't mind giving you my perspective. I think everyone has one. And if you're going to ask me, I'm going to tell you what I think. I don't know what beliefs people have out there, but my spiritual name is true. And it's the one lesson that was hardest for me to learn, is that when I tried to lie or when I tried to sugarcoat it, I didn't do a good job. And so, you take all of those experiences, and I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with D&I. I don't. I don't want to be pigeonholed in corporate America as a D&I trainer or a D&I leader. I don't want to have anything to do with it. And then yet, here I am again. And so for me, it keeps coming to the surface as something. I have 2 sons, a daughter, a husband, my dad, my mom, right? And lots of friends and family, but I grew up military. I grew up traveling to other countries. And so my perspective has always been slightly different than my Black brothers and sisters, and it's been different than my white brothers and sisters, and it's been different than my Hispanic and Asian and Latina. And so for me, I've always sort of been in the center of being different. And recognizing those differences. My aunt was born and had a stroke, and so she's always been, quote, handicapped or disabled or differently able, depending upon the language you choose to use. My cousins are married to people outside of our ethnic groups. It's just, it's just been a part of my life. And so I didn't feel the need, like I've got to go prove to people that I'm all about diversity and inclusion. If you want to know, you just ask. And but I'm recognizing, and I was saying this to Angela yesterday, it's like, I don't want to do this, but people keep reaching out. And so I'm not going to say no at an opportunity to help educate. That's the lens I like to go from. I'm going to educate. And I tell people Angela would wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt before I would, for a lot of different reasons, because my filters and my background are different than her experiences and background. Doesn't mean I wouldn't wear one today. It just means at the time that I'm like, I don't understand what this movement is about. And I think people have to recognize you don't just jump on bandwagons to jump on a bandwagon, right? You shouldn't just get into diversity and inclusion space because you want to get into diversity and inclusion. You have to do the research and get some understanding so that you can celebrate. I love that name. So you can celebrate the differences. But first you have to know what those differences are, recognize them, and be educated about them so that you can then participate in the process of helping to educate others around you in your sphere of influence. And so that's sort of my D&I story, a little bit back and forward. So I've always sort of been a part of the work, but every time I just kind of push it back, I'm like, I don't want to do this. It just keeps coming back. So now I'm sort of embracing it more fully, and you'll see more of me out here with Angela and serving clients in that capacity in a greater way. So, Doc?
I realized after I graduated with my bachelor's and I was offered an assistantship at the university that there was actually a science for something that I had been informally studying my whole life. You know, also growing up a military kid like LaTonya, I had lived in Italy and Germany instead of being raised where my parents grew up, which was in Arkansas. And if I had been raised in Arkansas, I would have thought a lot like a lot of people in the South, in Arkansas. I would have been socialized by that group, and I would have believed that life was the way it was where my parents grew up. But since I lived on military bases and went to military schools, I too, much like LaTonya, thought a lot differently than I might normally have for what I look like. So I think differently than you might think think for what I look like. So what you think I think it may not be what I think, you know, if you just met me on the street. And so then I got the opportunity to go to graduate school, and I just signed up. They said, if you will teach, because I had a training background, if you will teach, we'll pay for your degree. I didn't even ask questions what a communication degree was about. I'm like, I'm all about it, because I had always said when my professor said, you should go on and get your graduate degree. And so I joked and I said, well, if you or God or both of you can figure out how to pay for it, I'll do it. And so when I got a letter said, if you'll come and teach in our department, we'll pay for your degree, I said, yeah. And then I, you know, then I enrolled, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what? I had no idea what the study of communication was until my first semester. And that, to borrow a term, was a come to Jesus meeting. And there were a lot of tears, as many tears as in the financial aid office, because I hadn't had to write a lot of papers. I'd clept out of a lot of classes in undergrad. Well, graduate school is a whole nother thing. But what I discovered that first semester was that I already had been thinking about these things all my life in some of the classes. I got to take a intercultural communication class. I'm like, there's a science for this? You know, the way the Italians talk with their hands, and they're always, you know, all the tone and everything that they use. I didn't know that there was any kind of research or anything on the different ways that people communicated and behaved in the world that were just a part of culture. So that's kind of the lens through which I look and talk about D&I. So I had been just observing these things about people as I moved all over the world and all over the United States all my life. And then I got the unexpected opportunity to go to grad school and to have it paid for. And it just dropped in my lap. And, you know, sometimes I think we don't have enough sense to know what we need and what's good for us. And so that's partly, I mean, LaTonya does, but I don't, you know, so that's partly why I'm open to like a creative opportunity when it comes. It might be something I don't have enough sense to look for and say yes to. And so that's what happened when I went to grad school. And ever since then, I've been like, if people understood this, you know, so I'm the type of person when I learn, it's a gift to me to be able to learn, and my gift back is to be able to share that information with other people, and in a way that helps break down the pain and the misunderstanding of these experiences into helping us gain understanding so that we can just be enriched and celebrate each other really, as we don't reject ourselves necessarily. We understand ourselves better when we understand others better. So we understand both and come together in a celebration of both. It's not, you know, a lot of people are afraid of the D&I conversation because they think it's a choice between loving this group or that group. No, it's a both and, not an either or. So that's what I love about this, because it helps bring understanding and community. It helps build community where there has been nothing but misunderstanding and division and pain.
There's a proverb that says, Tom, just one thing, that says, she who learns teaches. And I always say conversely, she who teaches also learns. And so it's as Angela said, that I think, you know, that's probably why I choose education, to educate, to train, to equip people with the skills and knowledge is so that it creates community. When all of this started with the 2016 election, I will tell you, I had never cried. I'm not really into politics, partly because I just didn't grow up understanding all of that stuff, not because my parents didn't try to teach me, it's just I wasn't interested in it. And as I watched the handoff between Obama and Trump, the former president and current president of the United States, because I like to be respectful to authority, even if I don't agree. That's for free. I cried. I had never cried at an election, but I literally I was with my daughter and I cried like big ball tears. And I didn't understand. And so that's part of that was the period of time where people began to come. And so I'm going to transition this, Tom, if that's okay. I know you have a question, but for me, during that time, it was when that was going on. I go to a predominantly white church, and people, I knew they voted for the person I didn't vote for, and they supported that individual. And they kept saying, I'm going to pray for you until you understand. And I'm going to, and I don't see color. And so they kept saying this statement to me, and it wasn't helping me. In fact, it was infuriating me. And I was ready to leave the church that I knew I was supposed to be at for that time in that season of my life. And so I began to seek wisdom on how do I help people understand that saying I don't see color isn't actually a good thing. It's not a right thing. You can give me all the Bible scriptures you want. Saying I don't see color says you don't see me. And I needed a way to communicate that and share my perspective. And again, that's when Angela and we came together and we took color expressions and we created, there's blinders, because I had someone I could reach out to whom I trusted that I could ask the question. And I knew she wasn't going to steer me toward her perspective. She was going to put on her academic hat and sort of walk me through it. Why was I feeling the way that I was feeling? And even though I'm an academic, it doesn't mean that I could have done the research, and I had done a lot of that for my dissertation. But what I couldn't do in that moment was rectify my personal identity with this community that I was a part of. And so I needed to understand why people kept saying they didn't see color. I knew by the heart of what they were saying, but I didn't intellectually understand what they were saying. And that's where this book is a resource that helps people to have that conversation in a safe way, I believe. I might be a little bit biased toward it, but in a safe way, I think it gives you some language that you can begin to use to help have those types of conversations. And over the years, I have had those conversations and challenged and pushed people, and now they have a resource. So don't come ask me, don't make me the token Black girl to answer and solve all your educational needs about race and color. Go get the resource, read it, and then we can sit down and have a conversation about it. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that See Color is out here today, 5 blinders to seeing it, is that we have blinders and we need to have conversations, not in an angry, frustrated, because we do behave emotionally first, right? We react emotionally first. So a lot of the posts that we were seeing, a lot of the bitterness and the anger, those are all just the emotions that people have because that's how we first engage with something. And then we can react or we can have a logical response. That's the emotional intelligence literature that's out there. And that's one of the research papers I was writing, by the way. That's, again, another story for another day. But that's, but I didn't lose anything by having done that research. It actually helped me to be able to do what I'm doing today. And so knowing that we emote first, right? We react emotionally first, and then we logically respond. That helps us have the conversations. But we have to first recognize that every single human out there, that's how we do things, even kids. And it's the best thing to watch a kid. What are they going to do when you tell them no? They're going to have an emotional reaction. When you finally, either you can give in to their emotional reaction or you can wait it out. And if you wait it out, what's going to happen? Mommy, I love you. right? Like, or daddy, I love you. It's just part of the process, because now they can logically respond instead of just, and if you keep responding to the emotion, what's going to happen? Every single time they're going to show up with that emotion to get what they want. If I don't give in to it, I can retrain your behavior by how I respond to the situation. And so a lot there.
So no, I think that's a good transition. And I just wanted to double back for folks who we mentioned a couple of times that we mentioned D&I. For folks who don't know, that's diversity and inclusion work. So let's jump in then. So you had already started to jump in for us for your book, The 5 Blinders to Seeing Color. What's at the crux of this? Why do people who are both good intentioned, right, in other aspects of their life, they seem to be doing inclusion and they're so nice to everybody, and on that surface level they treat everybody kindly, say, oh, I don't see color, everybody treat everybody the same. What's wrong with this? What's also not true about it? Feel free any way you want to come and jump in on that.
Well, first of all, it's a lie. Physically, we do see color. I mean, most of us. A few of us don't. We have a disability visually, where we either misperceive color, blue as brown or blue as green, or we don't see color at all. But that's not most people. So most people, we see color, and the color informs us of what we're going to do. I'm looking outside of a window right now, and the sky is often blue. But when it turns gray, it tells me what to do. It tells me don't go swimming right now, or stay inside. Same with traffic lights. So there's a lot of information we gather from the world, and we categorize that information that's based on color, right? We do the same thing with people. Our brains are created to take in a lot of information at once. And because of the way our brains work, we quickly categorize things and people and situations and sounds. And when it comes to race, we over-categorize. And it's because of a lot of things, which you'll want to read about in our book. It's because of a lot of things and our history and the way we've been socialized and raised by our families and our communities and our schools and even our churches. There is a lot of background that we might even be unaware of, or it's subconscious. It's beneath the surface. We're not completely tuned into what those things are, but we have these beliefs that rise up and cause these feelings, right? So we react with feelings first, and sometimes we don't even know where that feeling came from. And so it's a lie. We do see color. Now, when somebody says, I don't see color, what they may be saying is, I'm trying not to see color. They may be saying, I'm trying not to treat you differently because you're not the same color as I am. But I'm definitely seeing that we're different physically, but I'm trying not to behave badly. So a lot of people may be trying to say that when they say, I don't see color, but what they may be understood to be saying by a person of color is, in order to treat you kindly, I have to pretend you're white, or I have to pretend you're like me. So that may actually be heard, and often is heard, as really a racist statement, in that I can't see you for who you are and for what you actually do look like, and be kind to you.
And I think that sums up the crux of the book, right? Is that there are areas where, right, if you say I don't see color to a person of color, it's almost like you're saying, what Angela just said is, well, I want to see you like me. And while inherently, again, we get it, right? I get what you're trying to say. Now, there are times when I'm not sure of your heart. So I'm not, I'm not sure I understand what you're trying to say. And I think that's where we have a lot of friction. But if I do know you and have a relationship with you, right? I think that's key. And I have a relationship with you, and I come and say, I don't see color. I would say, okay, I know what they're trying to say, but that's not the message that's being communicated, right? And in communications literature, we talk about the message sent isn't always the message that's received, right? The tonality, the tone, the language, the inflections in our voices, and the whispers, or the, oh my goodness, right? How we deliver that message, right? So walking up to someone, right, in an effort to say, I really want to understand, right? I want to understand what I don't understand. Just say that. But most people try to use this language of, I don't see color, to communicate what they don't understand, right? And that's their way of reaching out. And so but what it can do as a person of color is say, oh, so you don't think I have worth or value. And if you think about slavery and how people of color in this country, and granted, we know it's not all, right? We're educated. We know it's not every person. There was indentured servants and all of that. We know the history. But if you look at the data, the information, the research, you will find that there was a disproportionate amount of that history where people of color were enslaved in some capacity, namely Black people. And so to say that is to say, well, I see you like an indentured servant, or I see you like a slave to me, right? That's not what you intend. It's not what anyone intends, I hope, because there may be those who do intend it, and that's what they're saying, and right, that's a whole different conversation. But the crux of this book was around the people that we know are good-hearted, and that they are intending to say, I want you to know that I don't look at you any differently than me, but I don't know how to say that in a way that's safe for me. And so this book is designed to create a place of safety for the conversation that then can help you to grow your community and be more authentically you. Going back to something we were talking about earlier, I recognize my own color, whether I'm white, Black, Native American, Hispanic, Latino, whatever. I recognize my color and its contributions to the community that I'm a part of, but I also can recognize and respect the color of others. And that's what this is all about.
And if I could add one more thing, is everything happens in a context. This podcast, every piece of communication, every message, every text you send happens in a context, the context of the relationship. So a comment about color or race happens in the context of the relationship, but it also happens in the context of our history, which LaTonya referred to. So you can't say in the United States of America, I don't see color outside of the context of our undebatable oppression based on color. And so when you see a person of color, you know that there's a very high likelihood that that person has dealt with either directly in their life or directly in their ancestry some direct consequences of not only slavery, but of Jim Crow. And also, we're talking about recently about things that we can see now on our cell phones that everybody couldn't see historically, that are happening on our streets. So these are the contexts in which we make these comments. And if you say, I don't see color, you're saying, I'm pretending that none of this really happened. And I'm pretending that we don't have this context, which is more a statement of dismissiveness rather than it is of ignorance even. So that's another reason why it's kind of an unwise thing to say. If you don't know how to see color, that's another reason why you would want to get our book and gain more understanding about, oh, okay, so we should really pay more attention to that and talk to people about how they perceive themselves. And I can tell you one more thing. Being a baby boomer, I am on the closer side of 60 than I am on 50, right? So I'm about to have a birthday. And so when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, which happened to be the year I was born, and racism became illegal technically, right? So you could no longer not hire someone because of their race. And so there were certain laws that were put in place in terms of that. So that's when the terminology, when it started, I don't see color. When people stopped using publicly pejorative terms for people of color, when you could get sued or punished legally for using pejorative terms, that's when it stopped, when we stopped doing it as a culture, but we just did it behind closed doors, right? And so, so that's kind of where the idea, I just don't see color anymore. Let's just pretend not to talk about it, because now, so that's why we now call it political correctness. We're just doing it now differently so we don't get in trouble. It's not about being politically correct. I said that sarcastically. It's about being relationally competent, And so, so in the 1960s, when there were legal penalties that just began for those kinds of behaviors and talking about it, white people all of a sudden now were not allowed to talk about race the way they had been accustomed to. So they completely stopped talking about it at all. And so this is where the I don't see color thing comes from, because that was now the polite thing to do, and also the thing that kept you from getting in any kind of legal trouble or financial penalties. And that's the generation I was raised in, is you just don't talk about it. And that was, so generationally, for we are kind of a diverse group generationally. So that is kind of the era and the way I was raised, is we just don't even talk about race at all. It was a white American taboo that I believe started in probably 1964, maybe even a little earlier than that, but probably 1964 was the break dead point.
Man, y'all are dropping some serious gems, and this is only the tip of the iceberg. So if you've had even a little aha moment, which I know you have, I want y'all to head to tommerl.com/color. tommerl.com/color is where all the show notes are, including where you can purchase the book. At the very end, we're going to have y'all plug where people can purchase it as well. But I know for folks on the go, just head to my most recent blog post or tommerl.com/color. We're going to have the link for where you can get that. So let's kind of say the I don't know if it's the elephant in the room, but to make it explicit, that of course there's outliers, but majority of the time this is white people saying, I don't see color, right? So what is it about whiteness that has white people being the perpetrators, or the triumphers, like, we don't see color, usually you see a white person who's going to die on that hill. So what is the reason for that?
I think that, I'm sorry, that was good. I love the the theatrics. I love it. I think I think it kind of goes back when I think about my experiences within my church community. We've been raising our hands and praising the Lord together for years, because we've been there for now 12 years. So at that point, 8. And, right, we believe the same things inherently. We think we do, right? We think we believe right? Because we worship together and we serve the same God and we serve, right? And so, and we've prophesied words to each other and we released all of that. And then we have this color thing and it disrupts, right? I think why people do it is because it's comfortable. It's comfortable to say, I don't see color, because if I say, I really don't understand why Black Lives Matter, or I don't understand, right? Like, rather than ask a question that makes you uncomfortable, it's just comfortable to say, I don't see color. So I'm going to say, I don't see color, as if I were a white person, which I'm not, clearly. But like, I've been told I sound like a white girl. I talk like a white girl, right? So I might, maybe because of the environments that I've been in, I have a tendency to be able to say, okay, here's what I think they're thinking in this moment. And when I think about the people who walked up and, I want you to know, I don't see color. I was standing there most of the time in shock and awe, thinking, how is that possible? Everything that the Lord created has color. Like, what do you mean you don't see color? Just think of it and just look outside, right? Angela alluded to it earlier. We've got blue skies, we've got green trees, we've got purple flowers, we've got colors everywhere we look. So when you say you don't, like, it doesn't even make sense to me as the person on the receiving end. So I think in a way to protect their whiteness, to protect their beliefs that they, I believe this word of God, and I believe, at least in the environments that I've been in, right? And so I'm using the church specifically because that's where I tend to see it the most. It's my safe place. It's how I protect myself. But I think you flip to the other side, go to corporate, Um, Angela's right. They barely say anything at all. And until something happens, and now we want to have all these conversations. We want to have these listening sessions. Well, we had one about 10 years ago, and you listened and you didn't do anything, right? So it's the same thing, except you're not saying I don't see color. What you're saying is I'm going to pretend that I see color long enough to have a conversation with you in my corporate environment and say and acknowledge it, but I'm not actually going to take any action. I'm not going to make it part of the business strategy. I'm not going to integrate it into our processes. I'm not going to check it and hold people accountable to say, okay, if you have two candidates, one white, one black, and they're identical on paper, and there was a research study that was done on this, they're identical on paper, but one's name is Juanisha and one name's Tom. Which one are you going to hire? Oh, you hired Tom. Tell me why. When I specifically told you that the strategy was we needed to improve our diversity, right? So no, the way they're saying I see color is, oh, well, we had some listening sessions, check. We didn't have any affirmative action cases. We didn't have any EEOC claims this year against color or disabled, right? Like, so that's their version of I don't see color. It looks different, but it's the same thing. And so if it's not integrated, I have this term, integrated inclusion. If you don't integrate it into the strategy of the organization, or you don't personally say, here's the issue I have, then you're pervading your whiteness. And that's, it's a protection mechanism is what I would say. Doc?
I agree. It's about protection, not only self-protection, but also protection of power. So the first thing I'm talking about is self-protection, and we talk about egocentrism in the book. So people want to believe they're a good person, right? And most people want to believe they're a good person, whether they are or not. Very few people don't want to think they're a good person. So if they are coming up to LaTonya and saying, I want you to know I don't see color, they're doing that more for their own benefit than for hers, or as much, because they want her to think they're a good person, and they want her to think that they're not being racist against her, but they're really not thinking about how that message is going to affect Tanya. So a lot of times it's more for self-affirmation and self-protection, and their own ego needs fulfillment. Okay, now ego is not always bad, and we cover that in the book as well, but the research indicates, communication research and all kinds of social science indicates that it's really more about maintaining power, okay? And so we don't want to have the color conversations, because that would cause us to acknowledge that there has been a distribution of power that is not fair historically. And if we acknowledge the historical wrongdoing, then people of good moral character have to say, we might need to right some wrongs. And people really don't want to have that conversation. So I think it's about maintaining power. And if you control the conversation, then you can also maintain your comfort. And so it's about maintaining political power, maintaining power in the organizations, but also maintaining power of what conversations we have so that I can remain comfortable. Me specifically, Angela Courage, but also my type of people and the people I care the most about, which goes to in-group and out-group treatment. So because if my people are comfortable, then that's all that really, really matters, as long as we look good and look like we tried. I'm saying that sarcastically, but I'm saying it truthfully. That's what we do legally in our organizations and in our casual relationships as well.
Another round of aha moments for the good folks listening. And I know y'all are going to want to jump in on that chapter, which can be found tominal.com/color, and of course all other places where you can get the 5 blinders to seeing color. So one thing that I'm really hearing is really what we're saying is we're using color as a placeholder for race. So I don't see race. And that we're kind of talking about how as white people who predominantly say that, because for the most part, we as white people don't have to view our race to live safely in wherever we go. We don't have to think like, how is this person going to see me and how will it affect my safety? So we are arriving where inevitably we come to when we talk about race and white people's role in it is white privilege. So what role or what play or how does white privilege play into me being able to say, I don't see race?
Only white people can say that. Only white people can say that. Everybody else lives an experience where they have to be aware of not only their own race and their own culture, but also adapt to the white people they're going to be surrounded by every day in every situation, at the grocery store, at the gas station. If they happen to have a $20 bill that somebody handed them that they don't know is a counterfeit, or maybe that they do, but shouldn't be a life sentence, right? But even when they apply for a job, only white people have the privilege of saying, I don't see race, because whiteness or being white, and I think there's two different, that's two different things. Whiteness is the upholding of the privileges of being white to the exclusion and the harm of other people. Being white is a condition into which you are born, and you may or may not use it to do harm and exclude other people. Some academics may disagree with me, so it's not necessarily an accusation because you were born white, but whiteness is a problem. So that was a little tangent there that I may regret. So anyway, but
you won't regret it. I got your back.
Okay, good.
It was good. I liked it. Go with it.
Okay. I've been running that through my head lately, and I'm like, does that really make sense, or is that an excuse? So anyway, check me if I'm wrong, though. But only white people can say that. And no person of color in the United States, unless they pass for white, and if they are pretending to be white for safety and for advantages, which only white people have, would say that. So that brings to mind the question, well, why would anybody want to or need to pass for white in the United States? And why has that been done so often historically when it was possible? Well, because we know that there are certain advantages. There are economic advantages. There's social power. There are things I, as a white woman, can do and get away with without penalty that LaTonya cannot do.
Right.
That is the problem. And it's not that I should be stripped of everything because of being white. It's that LaTonya should be included in all of the benefits that I have. Maybe I should be stripped of everything. Maybe we should share everything. And that she shouldn't be not given a chance when she is pulled over and forgot her driver's license at home. She should get the same chance that I get when I forgot my driver's license at home. She should not get a ticket. She should get a warning too. Why is it that she's less likely to get a warning than I am? Did I get off topic?
No, I think you're making, Angela, I think you're talking at the issue, right? But I also want to acknowledge that there are layers to privilege, right? So it's when we talk about whiteness, right, and being white, I love that analogy. I think Angela and I get aha moments sometimes when we're teaching because we just are flowing. And so and I love that because it's like, it's you can be black, right? You were born black, but you can be full of blackness. Like that whole idea could be applied to any race. And I want to make sure we understand, but there is, right, historically in this country, there have been advantages for the color of your skin being white versus the color of your skin being something else. And that idea of privilege is that here's an example, because I like to use examples. When I worked in corporate, I worked for a pretty large company, and they were in the top, like, Fortune 1. And so just go look it up. And so we had a team of, I think there was 10 of us at the time. And my senior director was a black male. My boss was a black male. I was a black female. The other senior manager on our team, the equivalent of my boss at the time, was a Hispanic female. And then we had an Indian, like from India, female. Then we had a white female, a white male, a white female, and 2 white males. So that was our team. So I don't remember however many people that is, right? And I will tell you, it's the funniest thing, but somebody walked up to my boss at the time and said, how is it working on a team with like minority people and a Black leader? And I think he looked at me and I looked at him and I was like, is this really even a question? But I didn't say anything. And so his response was priceless. And I haven't forgotten it. His response was, well, you tell me, how is it working on a team with white people who look like you every day? Because that's the reality. Well, there's data and research that supports that we haven't paid Black people, women, or like 77 cents a dollar, and my numbers might be old, but 77 cents a dollar, Black women earn 62 cents for every dollar, and it takes 18 months for a Black woman to earn the same amount of money as a white male counterpart. Well, why? What if everything else on paper is the same? Everything, my years of experience, my leadership capabilities, I've done all of the assessments in the world that you want me to do. I've hired the coach. I've got the mentors. I've been in the private meetings, and I've taken on the special projects. I've led the transformational initiative. Come on now. What's the factor? Everything else is the same. What's left? The only thing left is race. It comes down to he's white and I'm Black. That's the difference. So it's privilege has layers to it. I'm privileged because I chose to get an education. Now, I chose to take out loans to get that education. I chose to, right? But I had someone make a post on social media about, I don't understand why anybody would go out and get a loan. Oh, that's your privilege talking, because you didn't go to school. You chose not to go to college. You chose not to get a loan because you chose to do it differently. That's your privilege showing. But you still have a successful business, and I'm over here trying to build a business. Interesting. You have no debt. I have debt. Interesting. But you got to start calling. So privilege has layers. It could be educational privilege. The reason yes, I'm Dr. Jackson. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not afraid of it. There was a time when I was. I'm not anymore. I just choose to just call me LaTonya. Unless I'm in an academic setting, then you will call me Dr. Jackson. Trust me on that one. Ask my students. And so, but I have a level of privilege because I understand things about higher education that people who don't have an education don't understand. So I have educational privilege. In fact, that same company that I mentioned before, the first day I was hired, my then boss wasn't the same guy I was referencing earlier. He said to me, don't tell anybody how much education you have. They don't care. And at that time, I wasn't Dr. Jackson. I was just in school to become Dr. Jackson. And so I walked around hiding a piece of who I was because educational privilege was the thing. And then people found out and they were like, I heard you're working out. Oh my gosh, you're really so right. And it turned into this thing that I just wanted to do my job. I just want to come in and be excellent and right. But I don't get to do that because of my race or my privilege in that space, dependent upon what privilege is. So privilege has layers. Race is the one that we have to deal with, I think, first, before we can start to address these other things more effectively. But if we don't get race right, the rest of them will continue to crumble and we'll continue to struggle in that.
And to add on to that, this is something that LaTonya and I actually wrestled with a lot in the book. So shall we get into the wrestling? I call it in my classrooms a wrestling match. Like the Southerners call it wrestling. And so we wrestled a lot with this in the book, and this idea of layers is not one I've read in the academic material. It's just the best way I could think of to describe privilege is that it's important to understand that privilege is something that is unearned. Like, I didn't earn the benefits of being born white, right? Or people don't earn being born male, but there's definitely pay benefits. There are benefits of being born male. You don't have to be afraid in the dark walking from the parking lot like being female. So there are benefits to that have different layers. So privilege is something you didn't earn. You just kind of got it by the luck of the draw, by the family you were born into, by the package you were born into, no pun intended, or, okay. So yeah, pun intended, the package you were born with or without or whatever. see, that would be something LaTonya wouldn't let me say if we weren't live, but I had to say it anyway. So anyway, and that's something that is hard, or that people often forget. Privilege isn't what I have worked to earn. Privilege is what was given to me. So some people have educational privilege because somebody else paid for it all. But other people don't have that privilege because they took loans, they worked their way to school. So maybe I have an education, but it wasn't given, so it's not as much privilege as the person who had it paid for by granddad's trust fund. So privilege comes in layers. So yes, so in the United States, some of the biggest markers of privilege and the biggest advantages are being male, being white, and having family wealth that you have access to. So all of those help you through school. If you have some kind of crisis, like you get arrested or you get sick, they create a safety net for you to fall onto that other people who don't have those layers don't have. And so it's kind of like being in the winter and having, not only your underclothes, but then you also have a sweater, and then you also have a coat, and then you also have gloves. So each additional layer of privilege you have protects you from the elements that would harm other people who don't have, those layers of privilege to protect them should something bad happen or prevent something bad from happening. Like money can get you out of some trouble if you drink too much on your night out.
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all adding the different layers of privilege and how different identities that they intersect. My sales job on this for folks listening is, that the more self-awareness you have and learn about this stuff, the less likely you are to be an asshole. And like you had said, that we want to be good people, but when you are unintentional out there, we're kind of a loaded gun. I can model for myself. So I work in the nonprofit field. And so I've been blessed that for the majority of my career, I've worked on teams where I'm usually the only guy and usually the only white person as well. And I can't tell you how many times we're out in public and people will come up to me and assume I'm the boss, right? So I know this. Everybody's joking about this. We're at a gala where, we're setting up, 400 tables, huge gala, right? Huge staff setting up all the tables and everything like this. And so I go over to this other white guy and I'm like, hey, here's a couple things we need. Can you make that happen? And he says, I can't, but let me introduce you to my boss, which is a Latina woman. And so I still subconsciously, even though this happens to me all the time and I'm joking about it, go up to the only white guy. And in my moment of stress and anxiety where I'm at this gala running around, I'm in a subconscious mode. And I assume that the white person in the room is the one who's going to be in charge because I'm programmed that way. And that wow, I'm an asshole moment, instead of me retreat. And I'm the best person ever. This is I'm telling y'all out there that it sucks. I felt like an idiot. I felt like an asshole. I'm supposed to know I'm at this fundraising event to end racism, but I can now be a little bit more intentional because I go through inside and I'm like, hey, the reason I did that is because of racism and white supremacy that I had subconsciously just been channeling. So I want y'all to go out and buy this book, tommerl.com/color, read through it. You're going to have aha moments where you're going to find behaviors that you're probably doing that are making you an unintentional or intentional asshole. We'll give you the choice. Do you want to bless and release this racist bullshit behavior that you've been perpetrating? And instead, you get to be a good person to your friends and to these people that you've been talking with. Y'all, I got 2 rounds of questions for you, if you'll humor me. Okay, first one is we live in a more globalized society. And so while we're talking about the U.S., one thing that I find is when you have a room full of white folks, we're having these conversations, you'll inevitably have somebody from Germany or Australia or somewhere from there. They'll be like, well, we don't have this in Germany. We don't have this in Sweden or Australia or these kind of places. So this doesn't apply to me. I do get the I don't see color medal. I don't know if y'all have had a situation like that, but I'm wondering if if you can speak to that.
So I can speak to it. I had a faculty member who was originally part of my dissertation committee, and he was from Africa. And anytime, I loved him. He was a great teacher, like a great instructor. But I could tell people would complain because they didn't feel like they could understand him in class, right? And I'm thinking I had no issues understanding him. I did have to press in. I had to make sure I stayed focused. And I have done that with anybody of international descent that was an instructor for me in my career. But I knew to do that because of my experience in other countries. And if I didn't understand, I also knew how to go and ask the question. So when I think about our international friends and partners across the waters there saying that this is a non-issue, the reality is it absolutely is an issue. And it's likely that you don't feel that it's an issue because people aren't talking about it. They're not telling you that it's an issue for them. They're like, this is just the way it is. And I think a lot of people have just accepted it. Like, this is just the way of life. Like, people, right? It's, that's an American thing, because there's a lot of that. It's not the Vietnam War, it's the American War. Like, so dependent upon where you are, you have a lens and you have a perspective that might be different. What I ask people in those moments to do is to go have a conversation with someone who is of other background and see if their experience mirrors yours. Because 9 out of 10 times that you're going to find that they've had experiences and encounters that you knew nothing about, they just never told you. So I'll go back to that professor. He calls me in his office one day and he says, "LaTonya, where are you from?" And I said, "America." I wasn't sure where the question was going. And I was like, "Oh, and then I was like, "Oh, Mississippi." Like, I'm thinking he's just asking where was I born, right? Like the traditional, because that's even in that. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he goes, "No." He goes, "Where are you from? Like, you're not from here." And I was like, I'm not an alien. I don't know where this conversation is going. And so he could tell I was a little perplexed, and I was trying to figure out like what are you really asking me? And he goes, "You're different. Tell me about your life." And so he says it differently. And I say, "Oh, well, okay." And I go through sort of what I shared here with you. I was a military child and this and that. And I went to school in the Philippines, and I lived, my understanding is that, I lived in Texas and Mississippi and Nebraska and this. And I just kind of start rambling off all of the locations of my history. And he goes, that explains it. And I'm, now I'm curious. It explains what? And so, right, we go on to have a conversation. He says, many people who even, right, he's in America, he's teaching at an American university, but he's from another country. And he begins to explain to me as a faculty member who is well astute in the field and space that I was in, published all of the things, right? Tenured faculty member, continued to have issues because he was from somewhere else. Now, in his country, he would have been very esteemed, but here in America, he wasn't. And so if you're in Germany or Australia or the UK or wherever it is that you might be, part of the issue is that the story hasn't been told, right? He wasn't broadcasting his issues that he was experiencing with students. He shared that with me in a one-on-one setting, private conversation, because I was different. I had been in classes with his wife, who, by the way, already had a doctoral degree in her country, but came to America and had to earn the right to have a doctoral degree here because it's not recognized. So she was back in school to get another degree that she already had the background and not, right? So there are other factors that people don't even consider when it comes to international racism that are prevalent and honestly need more attention than probably what we give it here in America, because we're trying to fix our own issues. But it's not that it doesn't exist there. It's not that color isn't an issue. There are, I saw a documentary even a few years ago of a Black, I think she was in the UK, Black English woman who was presumed American, who was married to a white man, a white Englishman. Let me clarify, right? And she was talking about her experiences when she's with her husband versus when she's not with her husband, and how people treated her differently. And so it exists this color thing exists internationally. It's just that you may not be aware of it. So go have a conversation. And that's actually one of the things we recommend in the 5 steps to removing blinders, is that you get comfortable being uncomfortable and go sit down with someone and have learn learn about their culture, their history, and then as over time, because it may not be that they share that with you on the first visit. Let's be clear. It would take a lot for me to share some of the personal things that have happened in my career. However, I might get to know you. I might be open to a lunch, or just, let's talk about this. I'm curious. I want to get to know you. I don't really know you. And over time, you build that relationship. And then there will be a time that they will begin to share with you their experience, or experiences that they've had historically, or you'll even observe something happening to them. And you'll be thinking, I wonder why they didn't say anything. That's the moment where you're going to find out that that wasn't the first time it's happened, and that they chose a response that said, I'm going to be logical here because I've already had the emotional reaction for the past 10 years of my life, or the past 40 years of my life. I'm choosing a response that's logical for me, that's going to protect me now and my family and my generations from a perception that is misguided.
And let me add to that as well. It may be called another name in other places, but because of colonialism and the world history of colonialism, racism is everywhere. In a lot of places, it's more recognized as colorism. But lighter-skinned people all over the world, in almost every country of the world, have preferential treatment. Even in all of the different countries on the African continent, when a white person goes there, they are a person of fascination, even when 99% of the people in that country are Black or dark-skinned. So, another thing to think about is the person saying that we don't have racism in this country is a lot like the people who were saying racism no longer exists in America because President Obama was elected. It's usually the person who doesn't experience racism who believes that it doesn't exist. It's the privileged class. So it's only white people who are saying in America, and probably in other places of the world, well, we don't have a problem with racism. The people who don't experience it are the only ones who believe that. So it may be called a different name, but also to what LaTonya was saying, you just are probably unaware of it, and you're just not exposed outside of your cultural group significantly that you would be aware of it. So, so good answer, LaTonya.
Y'all, I need you to go to tamro.com/color, purchase this book. Do it. Come on, make me look good, first of all. It's all about me. Get the book so that they tell, it's like, yeah, being on time shows the best. But honestly, get it so that it allows you, it gives you the tools for self-awareness. If you're feeling upset, which I hope you are, about what's going on, you want to do something to end white supremacy, this book, boom, is an opportunity, is a solution for that. Y'all, where can folks go besides tamro.com/color though? Where can they go to get the book directly from you? Where can they follow you? This is all about the plug. Where can they connect with you?
Well, we love the plug. So go to See Color, and color has 2 R's on the end. So SEECOLORR.com. And there you can purchase the book. You can also enroll. We're going to be launching a course in September called Around the 5 Blinders of Seeing Color. And so you can purchase the book. You can see you can look at our bio information. You can reach out to us if you'd like us to come and speak to your organization for a fee. We don't do this for free. I'm kidding. We do some lunch and learns and workshops and trainings. I really am kidding, y'all. Just reach out. And so, but we also have a Facebook community that we're starting. Doc has had a cultural fluency community for a number of years. that she's had out there where she talks about being culturally fluent. And we've started a C Color community on Facebook. You have to request to join that community. And at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a Facebook link on our C Color page that on ccolor.com, and you can click it and request to join and be part of the conversation. Of course, we want to talk about what's in the book. So if you don't have the book, start there and you'll get the link for the invitation to join the community. And in that community, we'll be asking questions. We'll be having more dialogue like we had here with Tom today. Loved his examples. And so those are the two places that you can find out more about C Color specifically. If you wanted to reach out to each of us individually, we have our own handles as well because we operate businesses. So you can follow us on ccolor.com and go like our Facebook page, and you can get all the additional information you need there. And of course, go to tomearl.com/color.
Boom, there it is. Repetition. We got the C Color RR going on the show notes. So you're going to find the link right there. That you're going to get it. Join the Facebook group. Get the book. Get involved. Be part of this awesome community. You're going to be so grateful. It's going to be when you end the year, you're going to sit there thinking, man, 2020 was a train wreck, but I am so glad that I bought this book and joined the Facebook group. It was probably the only amazing thing that happened. And that we kicked this asshole out of office. Those are probably my two top things that happened this year. I know you're going to say that if you buy this book. So, y'all, I want to thank you for taking this leap of faith. I reached out to you, didn't know who I was. I DM'd you, and you're like, all right, fine. So I'm glad you did. Yes. For being open, the years and years and years of work that you've done and emotional labor, all that you've put in, that you're sharing with us so graciously. I want to thank you so much, y'all. So that's my gratitude. I appreciate it.
Well, Tom, we thank you. This was fun. And I love the name Celebrations. I love everything that you're doing here. The few podcasts I got to watch before today. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep serving the community and bringing people like us, and even people who are opposite of, it's the more well-rounded we are, the more educated we are. I think the more we can begin to engage as a true community in conversations, right? We can begin to engage together with one another and actually come up with solutions together that help us move the needle on this color thing across the United States, or first start with yourself within your community, and then the United States, and then ultimately the rest of the world. So thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for having us on, Angela.
I feel so honored. I'm sitting here imagining what this community is like, and I just heard of you this week when LaTonya sent me the link, and I'm like, wow, there's such an amazing world out there. How can people not want to discover people who are diverse and have diverse experiences from themselves? And how can people be so uncurious? And I feel really honored that you would have us here and let us spill our guts and say awkward, weird things, and kind of share our lives with you. And I don't feel like you're going to edit very much of us, so I appreciate that too.
Oh, no, we leave it all in. So, team,
I guess I need to check and see if LaTonya needs anything edited out.
Oh. Team, our closing ritual is for you to share an invitation with the folks listening. So it's an invitation that you'd like people to consider, to become, to evolve into, all of that kind of stuff. We've already invited them to read the book, so don't worry, we got that covered. So it's, like the big picture invitation, or if you got a specific thing, what's your invitation to the folks listening?
So I would say I invite you to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Every coaching client right now with COVID-19, the novella COVID, coronavirus, all of that, people are stressed out. People are frustrated. So the emotions are already heightened. Add to that this color issue. And people are going to say things. They're going to flip you off while you're driving. It may not be race related at all. It could simply be that they're tired, they're stressed out, they're frustrated. I was coaching someone yesterday. There's so much anxiety. And anxiety leads to uncertainty, and that then creates opportunity for us to abuse our power and become egotistical or egocentric, and then that makes us ignorant in the moment, and that leads to people thinking we're immature. Those are the blinders that we talk about in the book. So, but it doesn't just, it's not limited to color. So I invite you in those moments when someone flips you off, or when you're in a situation about race and you're not sure what to say, I invite you to get comfortable being uncomfortable in that moment, and ask the questions. Don't presume or assume, but ask the questions that may make you uncomfortable in the moment, but that will help you grow. And if you can grow beyond your own perspective to be inclusive of the perspectives of others, then I think this world will be a better place. Learn something new, at least one thing every day. Try to learn something new, and then take that and teach it to somebody else.
I like to say, get uncomfortable together. And LaTonya and I did a news interview that I thought was pretty cute back home. And it just ended with us kind of laughing at each other. And she said, get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and get comfortable being uncomfortable together, because that's where we change, right? That's where we change for the better. But I would also add to that, never waste your sorrows. We have personal sorrows. We have pains and things that could and maybe have ripped us apart from the inside out. And if we waste them, we will end our lives in the bottle somewhere or in a ditch somewhere. If we waste our sorrows and we don't let them drive us into being someone better, then it will be a waste, not only for yourself, but for humanity. And so the sorrows that have kind of driven me into this area all my life without even knowing it were some of the sorrows of being an outsider, being rejected when I came to the United States and my English was so German sounding that nobody, that I got picked on a lot. And, so there were some sorrows that drove me into compassion and into learning. And so, but so if we use our sorrows to drive us into goodness and to drive us towards each other rather than away from each other, not just as individuals, but as a community, as a collective, we are dealing with some collective sorrows that are just almost unbearable. I mean, I cry almost every day right now. And if we will use those sorrows to drive us to learn, to drive us to care about people more, and in that sorrow, let's learn about other people, and let's learn about the sorrows other people are dealing with. It can drive us as individuals and as a collective into just being more of what we were supposed to be before all this mess started. And now we got handed down a mess that we've got to clean up. So if we don't waste our sorrows, if we embrace our sorrows and use them, then we can turn this whole mess around. This generation now, my generation, I don't know if there's much hope for most of us, but the rest of you that I'm seeing here, I think there is. And if y'all will lean in and not waste your sorrows, you can make you can turn it. You can turn it. And I believe you can. And just don't waste this opportunity. Don't waste this COVID opportunity. Don't waste the deaths of all of the Black and brown people of color that have had their lives senselessly taken. Let's just not waste our sorrows. Let's make some kind of right out of it.
I love it. Well, thank you once again for being a part of this. I wish you both the best, much success, and I look forward to connecting down the road and seeing what's going on.
Thank you, Tom.
Of course. And to all of those who are listening or watching, as always, we're wishing you peace and blessings. Thank you.
One more thing. I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to join me at tomearl.com/join. Subscribe below, or let's connect on social media. Tom Earl Artist. Thanks again for watching.